This week in Challengers, Enigma explains to me what a Europa Cup is. Priestahh is dropping knowledge bombs on the timeline. We take a look, of course, at the Elite Season 2 North American standings, and Enigma and I do a little bit of power rankings to be able to tell you who is going to be doing good when it comes to the playoffs. Lock in, everybody, because we've got a lot to talk about this week in Challengers. Kicking off this episode, we have a nice, fun little sort of segment, something that I think Enigma and I love talking about, right? And that is just sort of comms when it comes to, of course, Call of Duty. Now, Priestahh here, I think, was able to summarize our thoughts pretty well. And we want to kind of dive more into it because he's responding to a clip from Aches on the flank saying, you know, one thing you have is, you know, basically half the league doesn't call out and the rest of the flank agrees, where they say the one thing you have to have no matter what is communication. Half the league doesn't even know how to do it right. Priestahh continues to expand, saying, I agree with the comp thing nowadays. A lot of teams don't have systems anymore because a lot of the new gen don't understand and don't care to understand. More like a spawn up and do what you want, free for all. And I think we really agree with this. You know, as casters, we oftentimes do those listen-ins in the middle of series, and we'll use that listen-in sometimes as a nice little heat check, a temperature check on how a team is feeling. And that's one thing I know you and I have talked about where we've noticed when we do these listen-ins, sometimes just these teams, the comms are rolling, but they're not good comms, right? They're not the impactful comms you would hope to see out of a team trying to win a series.
No, and it feels like it almost falls into two different buckets. You either get a team where it feels like everyone's just kind of shouting into a void and nothing's really being listened to make it seem like you're calming, but it's not in any way constructive, or just there's not much coming out and it feels all a bit dead. And it's weird. Like, this is something that I spoke a little bit about at EWC, where teams, I feel like you get a lot of just like picking up players because the KD is pretty good and stuff like that, but you don't think of systems or player profiles is maybe a better way to kind of talk about this. And it's the same in anything. A lot of us who have played more traditional sports, for example, like I played a lot of football when I was younger, the actual football, not going into it, but you'd have like one person who is captain, and that person's voice rises above all. And you would make that the person who is more than happy to like kind of put it forward. They're there to have the difficult conversations, and their voice carries across the room. You would have people who would kind of be their side men, and they would kind of like filter in and out and have these very positive relationships. And you'd also have people that would say very little, not that they're being unimpactful, but they're more listening and acting rather than trying to, I don't know, churn up that comms chatter. And I think that sometimes when you look at some of these teams, that I am looking for, when we listen in, it's like I'm listening for someone to kind of, who's the commander, who's the guy who's going to sit quietly at the bottom and just kind of react off the information, and who's the people that are chipping in with important things. I know I've got to listen when they're coming in, but also then they don't talk when there isn't that much going on. And you're right. Sometimes we tune into teams. I'm kind of like, which strategy are we following here? Like, who's got hold of this game right now? And to many players right there, if you're thinking, I'm a very talented individual player, but I can't figure out what's going on with my team, maybe take a look at your comms, see if they're cluttered, because I don't know about you, brother. It drives me crazy when I can't pick out what's going on.
Yeah, it's really, really rough. And the one thing that kind of sparked my interest with this tweet and why I sent it over to you and you're like, this is a great thing to talk about, was specifically when it comes to challengers. When we look at sort of the challengers ecosystem over the last 2, even 3 years, right? To me, it's no surprise that we see a lot of the same names towards the top of the pile year over year. And that's because I believe these players who maybe have played in the league, they've been around since the CWL days, right? They've been through teammates. They know what good comms sounds like. And it was this piece of Priestahh's tweet where he says, like, a lot of teams don't have systems anymore. And that is, to me, what kind of is the marker, because a lot of these top-end players, they know what it's like to play in a system. And whether it's, you know, they're actively creating one, they're going to try and have something, right? We all talk about it. Like in times of chaos, you're going to fall back onto your fundamentals, right? And that's what we got to talk about when there's like a system. There's like a team has a default maybe play and search and destroy that. When you're down 3 rounds, you say, hey, we just need to go for a default here on B and just kind of maybe see how it plays out, right? And maybe go back to the things that you know and love how to do to kind of go ahead and reset. And I think what we're seeing in Challenger specifically is that's where that gap gets created, right? You have the top end teams who have those fundamentals, who have the systems as a team that they can operate out of, versus on the other hand, where you get just like you said, it's the four gunners who want to just go ahead, squad on up and think they're going to be able to make some type of run at an open. It's just, and that's just like the difference in those, you know, systems, which is why when we talk about, you know, later on in this episode, the top teams of challengers, look who are on those rosters. It's all top challenger and ex-CDL players for the most part, and it's no surprise to see them consistently there.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. And I'm looking at like some of these teams that are kind of like on the cusp. I think Stallions are often a good shout. Like that
Sure.
level of player where it's like you're not yet of league quality. You're a good player. You clearly understand how to play the game pretty well. But it's okay, how do I elevate the rest of my team? How do
Yeah.
I take that tide, rise it, and lift all ships? And communication is a very easy win, or at least it can be. And it's like, okay, well, what's separating you from a team that will, I don't know, walk on through to playoffs this week? And it's like, okay, well, sometimes it can just be those fine moments, as you said, when everything goes wrong, can they relax and settle in on each other? It seems like something that almost we should, by this age of Call of Duty multiplayer, everyone understand. But as you said, the more often we listen in, the more often we're sitting thinking, the hell's going on here?
Now, when we did our notes for this show, Enigma put down on a line Europa Cup question mark, and I had no idea what that meant. And of course, he's talking about it about the Pup Cup going on here. I learned some stuff for our EMEA and EU friends. So hey, I like to learn here, but obviously Pup Cup goes on this last weekend. Not a lot to talk about here, but I think there are a couple cool storylines. So let's kick it off with Alpha here, Enigma, because I think this was somebody that we talked a lot about last week. Obviously excited to see them land on a team.
Yeah, so Alpha's going to be on Team Collect there in third. Now, this is a young man that played very well over here in Europe. He's a Frenchman, plays very well in Europe, flies over to North America because he believes, as with many others, you can go and have a greater impact there, raise your stock considerably, and get yourself potentially into the league, or at least on a very strong elite squad, which, they're getting paid these days. So, he goes flying over, has a team set up just before the elite qualifier, and they break up about an hour before roster window closes, and that's a tough situation. There was a whole like social media movement as like justice for him, and I understood it because it was a shame, but it's really good to see him kind of get to run in this Pup Cup, and Alpha will understand the term Europa League. But he makes it all the way through to third with this lineup, and he looked very good out there as well, putting up some scary numbers at points. I think I remember one of his respawns in the later stage being like a 44 and 21. So yeah, this guy was looking dangerous out there, and proving that he should have some serious stock, especially with teams that finished slightly above them. Maybe some of those that are going to be struggling through the elite this week.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see that, like you mentioned, like when you have to pick up a team at such a last second, being able to take a team like that all the way, even third. I understand it's a Pup Cup, whatever, but just for, we just got done talking about, sort of these ideas of picking up 4 random players together and some of the skills that you need in order to become better. Being able to have a team of Collect, Lieb, and Desi alongside you, I feel like that's kind of a win to me that's there, But besides them, a couple other more notable moments here. Obviously, in second, we see sort of Hamza, aka Glowfrosty, is back into the mix, comes in second again with 3 other players. I feel like this is just time and time again what Hamza does, right? Is like finds a team of rando threes and is somehow able to find themselves pretty deep in a bracket, that is for certain. But it's also this top team that I think is really, really interesting, and being Team Cootie, who of course take first place, of course, in this cup, being Cootie, Zuner, Aaron, and Icons, right? We've seen sort of all 4 of these players circling around challengers, Icons mainly, right? We saw a lot very early on coming out of Icons, and to see them maybe get left out of sort of this last sort of round of roster mania, still find themselves towards the top of this sort of challenger scene, even though, like you said, it's a little bit of the Europa League, Pup Cup, whatever have you. Good to see them at least still being able to find some success.
Yeah, the lifetime connection coming through there. A big fan of, as we've said, Icons, Cootie as well. I think these are 2 players that have been on our radar for some time. And for Zuner and Aaron, this is an opportunity to kind of just again, it's a tough one going into a Pup Cup because obviously everyone you don't wait anywhere near as much as a normal cup. Of course you don't, but it's one of those like again teams that are struggling in the elite or anything like that. It's like, well, here's your next tier. Like go and pick up from it and see how they do. Or do these teams stick together? Does Team Cootie now feel like, okay, we're on a heater? How long can we keep this going for? Can we take that into the cups where the elite teams come back in? And if so, you make your own one at the elite qualifier or maybe an open that could be coming up very shortly. So, yeah, very interesting stuff indeed from this team. I don't know. I feel like every time I look at like, I think over in Europe, it was a lot of the same kind of names that I expected to be up there. For North America, obviously, I think you're expecting those top 3 teams to kind of appear up towards there, but there's so much talent over in that region that even though you don't weigh as much as a normal cup, I still sit there and I go, you've had to grind to get here. You've had to get through some pretty strong squads.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing that we always have to, why we even choose to cover this, right? Because somebody will be like, hey, there was a lot going on this week. Like, is this really the best thing? But I think it's important to still keep our eyes on these teams, because when it comes time towards things like roster mania, like you said, towards some of those opens, when we kind of talk about season 3, these are some of the players that we like to keep our eyes on, because if they're starting to heat up over the course of a season, well, now it makes sense, where maybe it's not immediately, but if we're talking, basically towards the back half of the season, when we're looking at players like maybe Kuti or Icons or Hamza, and maybe they're getting that last second pickup for a champs run or something like that. Okay, well, now we're starting to have a little bit of piece of the picture of why some of those players are getting the respect they deserve. We got our first 2 days, of course, of the season 2 group stages going on. And I have a little bit of a unique situation here, which is for the first time in a little bit. We actually basically know who our 8 teams making it into the playoff bracket are before even having to play the last final day there, right? So maybe just a little bit of consolation prizes, play for some seeding kind of in this coming week that's coming on. But what I wanted to do here at Enigma was I want to talk about basically our teams that made it through and the teams that didn't, because we did a little bit of predictions not too long ago before our entire group understanding got completely shuffled due to some last minute things that went on there. But this is kind of maybe a little bit of an opportunity for us to redeem ourselves, but also have some actual ideas here. So let's start with Group A. Obviously, we have Telluride Bush, Brooklyn, Falcons Academy, Death by Cabal are going to be the teams moving on, with Cabal Esports and Fries in the bag not moving it on. Little disheartened to see Fries in the bag there at the bottom with an 0-4. That was a team we were really hoping would actually kind of seemingly come out of nowhere after, of course, our playoff stage, or not the playoff stage, but the qualifier stage, to be able to come on in. A little bit heartbreaking to me to see them 0-4.
Not even just 0-4, it's 2-12 in match count.
I didn't want to call it out, but you're also right. It's
Kentucky Fried. That is bad. They got battered. Look, the thing is, I'll give these guys, of course, plenty of props. It's Cruz, Gunless, Gunzy, and Nate. I will say, I don't know, this continues to hurt Nate's stock, in my opinion. I just don't see, his year started off on 0 at Brooklyn, and he was this young upcoming talent. And I don't know, man. It feels like he's on a slippery slope right now. But for a lot of these players, I guess you're in a situation of, look, we don't get to play at the hours that we used to these days. We got commitments and stuff going on. And so, the whole name Fries in the bag, that's kind of where it's born out of. I think actually the talking point is more to do with that Cabal roster that you're highlighting right now, to be completely honest with you. I thought they would be fine. Darkside, KB, Phantoms, and Rooper. I thought they'd be pretty good in this group. I thought they'd at least get through. I know some of you are going to be like, oh, well, technically they can go 2-3 and match with Death by Cabal. They would lose the head-to-head because they lost to Death by Cabal. I will say I think this is a really strong group. I don't think there's any such thing as a weak group in Elite, but this is a very tough group. But I don't know, man. I was watching some of the games, and there was a lack of spine to the team that I expected to be more there, and disappointing performance. I think towards the top end, though, Bush, Brooklyn doing exactly what we expected them to do. Bush in particular, they're looking great with Abe right now. There's not very often you get a trade that makes both people happy, and I think right now Bush would be delighted with Abe coming in, and obviously Serge are going to be very happy with Cap going the other way. So props to them, because Bush hopefully managed to make a little bit of dollar off that too.
Yeah, no, I was happy to see that, because that was obviously our biggest question, right? With so much roster mania happening with the Bush, it's a 2-man change coming into this season. Does that hurt? Does that hinder them? And obviously what we're seeing there does neither. Awakening had some really fantastic moments, like you mentioned, Abe as well, kind of coming on in. I think what the sauce there is, those are 2 very heavy firepower, I think, players, right? And it allows for, hey, if Wake's not really having a game, or maybe if it's not as much of an AR map, Abe can have those takeover moments. If it's maybe more of one of those AR power position type maps that you're looking for, okay, those are the maps that Wake can really kind of come online and be able to hold out on. And I think that's been a little bit of the sauce. And obviously on the back end of the Telluride Bush, being able to have people like Fire in there as well, just kind of holding down the line and doing what Fire's got to do, Big Lou. I think that we're starting to see, obviously, why this Telluride Bush roster is definitely one to keep our eyes out on. For Group B, let's talk about them for a little bit, because thankfully for Group B, it at least wasn't as nearly one-sided. We didn't have one team. While we did see the Huntsmen going 0-4, they at least still were able to win some maps there. Made me feel a little bit better about the team than necessarily Fries in the bag, but I don't know, 0-4 is still 0-4, which is tough, man.
I don't understand the changes that they've made. They bring in Dimensions and question mark brain going blank because I'm sick. Dimensions and Johnny. Now, I'm a fan of both of those players. Johnny in particular, I really do back that guy. But I don't know, man. Like Renegade looks. Why we've moved him to the AR, I have no idea. Like I thought that he looked great through stage one, was getting better and better. Looked good at the open as well, to be completely honest with you. And then I don't know, they've moved into the AR, and he just looks way out of place. Now I don't know if it's him figuring that out and trying to fit into the system, and he feels like he's got time to do that, but. A result like this, we don't even make playoffs. I don't know how much longer you're going to get the opportunity to figure that out before the team either go, look, back to the SMG for you, or, brother, you ain't putting up the numbers and we got to figure something out here and make a change.
Yeah, it's a really good call out. I do kind of wonder there, like you said, if it's like, you know, we talked about fundamentals earlier on, like he's got his entire essential Call of Duty understanding built off the SMG role and how to play it. Yeah. Now I know going in it, he said, I'll run anything, you know, I'll run whatever we need. And that's sort of the benefit coming from Halo, right? He's not one of these other players who has to, you know, wait for it. That guy was dirty with the battle rifle. That's all I'm going to say, right? Like, I don't care what it was. He's used to those long range engagements that are there, but in Call of Duty, it's a little bit different. So, you know, maybe you're right. Maybe it's potentially just a stage of Renegade trying to maybe figure out, learn Call of Duty from a different role. It's a different gun. It's a different pacing, all kinds of stuff like that. It was heartbreaking to see Huntsman there. I just wonder if maybe they weren't able to piece it together in time. That's going on, but hey, hopefully they can manage to lock it on in. I would love to be able to see them at Birmingham, obviously an org that can go and be able to have that fun and travel. We'd love to be able to see them there. Excited to see what they can do at the Open. Stallions Black 1-3. I wish I could say I'm surprised. I'm not. Pumped to see them at least be able to get one on the board. That's for certain. But yet again, this just felt like a team that maybe was like a little bit too hot coming on into it. Still just got to kind of figure it out. A lot of young players here. And I think that's can have those moments where when the pressure is on, sometimes they kind of start to crumble.
Yeah, I think the Stallions team just kind of feels like a lot of recent Stallions teams, which is, as you just said, when the pressure's really on, when they're under the microscope a little bit, and it starts to go wrong. Going back to what we talked about earlier on in the show, systems. There isn't one. It is a case of, okay, we're just trying to play our game individually and hope our talents shine through. And at this level, you're just not going to get away with that. So, yeah, unfortunately, Stallions will be bounced out of here. Again, the head-to-heads mean that they will lose this regardless of how the results go this week. So, yeah, it's a tough time for them. They'll still play for fun. Wait, I'm not sure which for fun, actually. I need to triple check that one. But it's a good set of players.
Yeah.
Who, I don't know, you probably land at just about where you're expected to. I guess towards the top end, Project Notorious, looking as good as we thought they would be, right? 12-4 in terms of map count, 4-0, looking pretty dominant. They go to a game 5 against one of the 4 funds, but I don't know, at no point through the games that I got to watch did I ever feel like they were looking anything short of very, very sharp.
Now for some fun here. We have been wanting to do this for a little bit. We thought this was finally a good time because, like we mentioned earlier, we already know the 8 teams that are making our playoff bracket. So this feels like a good time to do this. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're doing a little bit of a quick fix power ranking. Built this little tool here before we went live to be able to do this. So before we dive on into it, I'll let everybody know we're going to start at the top. We're going to go from 1 all the way down to 8. We're each going to pick who we think should be in a certain spot. We're going to talk about it, probably yell at each other about our dumbass takes, and continue to make their way on through. When we're done, we'll post this to social media. You let us know in the comments. Do you think we were right? Do you think we were wrong? Do you absolutely hate us and think that we're idiots? Please let us know all of those feelings in the comments. We do read all of them, and especially the ones where you say that you hate us. But anyway, my friend, let's kickstart it off with the top spot here. I'll let you go first on who you think should go in the first spot, and I'll let you know if I agree or disagree.
For me, it is hard to look past Telluride Bush. I think that this team, number 1 for me, and they look very good in what is a very difficult group, and the way they pushed aside Brooklyn. They haven't gone to a game 5 once. I don't know. This team for me, with Abe in it, slaying out everything.
I will agree with you. I'm glad that our top spot isn't really in contention. And for me, it's a lot of the same things. They went against some top teams. They did very well. I look at them. It's kind of between them. It was between Project Notorious and the Bush for me. I think for the Bush, they're not as new of a team as Project Notorious. So it feels like to me when it comes to maybe deeper in those brackets, when we talk about the playoff brackets, things like that they should be able to hopefully, kind of hold the line, not have to make this sort of losers run that sometimes we've come to expect when it comes to the Telluride Bush. Maybe finally they can sort of carve their way through winners. So with that, I'm going to keep it rolling in number 2. To me, I know it feels maybe cheap to go like number 1 Group A, number 1 Group B, but I just think Project Notorious is the next roster for me that really deserves, I think, to be up there. They're the only other team that feels like they are kind of a cut above some of the other rosters that are here. How do you feel about that at number 2?
I agree. I hear what you're saying about potentially cheap going top 1 of each group gets the top spots, but they're undefeated and both teams look great. Yeah. So there's no reason to kind of not do that at the minute. I think a lot of the conversation honestly comes down to these next spots. And we haven't pre-discussed this, so I'm a little bit unsure about how this is going to go.
All right, hit me. Number 3, where are you sitting?
I think I am sitting with, I'm going to go Brooklyn for this one. I think that this is a team that, actually, I don't know. Fuck, I don't know. You know what? No, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to go for Fun and Fellow. And I think that this is a team that have surprised me with how good that they have been. I wasn't sure about what they would look like through this stage, through this part of the season. And especially with the way Fellow was a bit sour grapes about getting dropped for the first time ever. So for me, this team have kind of overcome all odds and are putting themselves in a good spot for a playoff run.
So you're going for Fun and Fellow?
Yeah, I'm going for Fun and Fellow.
I gotta go Brooklyn, man. I gotta go Brooklyn. They were. I think that this Brooklyn roster. I think it just feels better. It's hard to bet against Real, dude. It's hard to bet against Real. Like, if I'm being honest with you, I'm trying to think, let's think of last stage, right? I mean, Fellow is a great player, but there are also some moments where I'm like, you've been around forever. You should be tucking right now, and just wasn't, right? With their team. I just feel like when I look at this Brooklyn roster, I feel like they have a higher ceiling to me. And that's what I like more. I like that they have a higher ceiling where, would I be surprised if For Fun and Fellow came out and made a run? A little bit. Would I be surprised if Brooklyn came out and made a run? Not really.
All right, fair enough. My natural instinct was to go with Brooklyn, and I've changed it for Fun and Fellow, but I'll give you Brooklyn on 3rd, just because maybe I'm overthinking it just a tad. But then for me, For Fun and Fellow have to go in 4th.
I do agree with that. I do like that.
Which again, this roster surprised me because the team that they play up against, what do you call it? This week, I mean, the For Fun Esports roster, they actually beat them 3-2, if I remember correct. No, wait. Which way around did that play out? I forget which way that played out. I actually watched a part of this live as well. Let me triple check. So For Fun, let me triple check exactly which way that played out, because I think this determines how I feel about this. All right, yeah. So For Fun and Fellow did beat For Fun. Yep. So for me, that then puts them up there, because for me, that For Fun roster is actually like gross. Like this For Fun roster is like what, Geo, Mac, Yuli, and Vivid, and for me, I thought that team was going to dominate.
I'm right there with you. I'm gonna vote For Fun at number 5, because I think right there with you, this feels like a roster that basically maybe has struggled a little bit, because dude, this roster came together basically right before roster lock, right? And they've only had really these group stages, which are the more like high pressure matches for them to be able to play through. And it just feels like this is a team that's only going to get better over a season, right? Or as they play more matches, especially when it comes to a bracket, right? That's a very scary team in a bracket type of sense. And I think that they are going to be, right. And these power rankings are for right now. Now, I would not be surprised to see, and maybe when it comes time for the next elite that we go on through, or maybe once we kind of get through the bracket, for this For Fun roster to be up in our top 1 or 2. Would not be surprised at all for us to maybe have that opinion. I think for right now, though, after what we saw, I think they're in a good spot. But let's keep it going. Number 6, who you have?
I'm going to go with Falcons Academy, not necessarily because I'm particularly confident in them. We talked about this in last week's episode, where this is last minute changes coming through. And I don't know, there's just something as well about the balance of the team. I just look at it as like a bunch of shooters, to be completely honest with you. So I'm a little bit like, all right, I think this team's going to be able to out firepower the 2 teams below them, but I don't see them be able to out system the 5 teams above them.
Yeah, the games they won, it's a game 5 against the Cabal that doesn't qualify, and it's a 3-0 against Fries in the Bag. So it's like, You know, if that been against one of the top teams, maybe I would have felt a lot better about it. But then their other 2 games, it's a 1-3 loss to Death by Cabal, and they go to at least a map 5 against Omit Brooklyn, which is what I think puts me up a little bit higher onto them than necessarily, let's say maybe Death by. Let me take a look here. Death by Cabal. They also, I mean, I might actually go Death by Cabal here. If I'm being, I'm actually going to go I'm going to argue Death by Cabal, and here's why, right? Because if you look at the Falcons, they beat the 2 teams. Their 2 wins are from the teams that didn't qualify out of their group. Death by Cabal still at least won a 3-1 against Falcons Academy, but they also took maps off of Brooklyn and Bush. Whereas if you kind of compare that on the inverse, well, I guess they did go to a map 5 against Brooklyn. So we also have rated. It's what do you weight more, taking a map win off Bush or taking a map win off Death by Cabal? That's kind of where I'm feeling. And they also went 3-2 against that Cabal Esports. You know, it's like,
yeah, I mean, maybe I've just massively undervalued this Death by Cabal team. I don't know, because seeing that they beat the Falcons,
and they still take maps off of to me, them taking a 1 map win off of both Omit and Brooklyn feels better to me than like taking a 1 map off of Death by Cabal and then going a map 5 against Brooklyn. You know,
I agree. Actually, you know what? I hate that I've done this, but I agree. I think maybe, I don't know. I think that there's something about me, because even last week I didn't really fancy this Death by Cabal team, and again I got to watch a bunch of the games through the week and they were fine. So I don't know why. I've just got it in my head that like I hate these guys. So you know what? Yeah, just kidding. You know what, Rex? Just straight to my notifications. I apologize, brother. But no, actually, you're right. I think Death by Cabal have done a good job. I think that the Falcons Academy team, like, could I see them beating some rosters that they probably shouldn't just because of their ability to shoot? Yes. But I don't know. I'm nervous. Face Falcons, yeah, that's down at the bottom. Let's be straight honest there.
But we'll give them some credit because we were very curious on if this team would qualify, just given so much of their last second changes that happened that came on through, and then obviously with sort of just even some of the makeup of 3 Saudi players and Swooty basically coming on through. That's there.
God bless Swooty.
I mean, listen, hey, they win 2 maps. And that's all they need, right? They can lock in and hopefully play their last maps, you know, obviously this week, feel good about maybe going into the bracket, you know, and playing those that are there. But I do agree. I think looking between those 2, like Falcons Academy, just by our same thing. Definitely, I think the next one above, and Face Falcons down there at the bottom. How are we feeling about this list, man? 1 through 8. Go ahead. They're ranked. That's there. How are we feeling overall?
I think the team that I expect to outperform this list is that 4th roster at 5th.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised again. They're top 3 at the very minimum. Maybe this was a thing of like they've got to figure each other out under intense competition and under scrutiny. They've odd review. They've got ridiculous potential. So yeah, that team for me probably getting through to like a losers finals at the minimum. But otherwise, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I think this lines up pretty well. And also, apologies to Death by Cabal fans. I don't know why, but I undervalue you so much.
That's right. Enigma hates you, Death by Cabal fans, and that's A-okay. No, I'm right there with you. I think that there's a lot of change that I know we obviously like pretty quickly ranked these top 3, but I think it's definitely would not be surprised to see at least the 4 number 5 spot to make their way on up, or even this Death by Cabal team. We could see them also kind of skyrocket their way up. Definitely have those stocks there. We'll have to come back to this. We'll revisit this in the future, maybe post bracket, see if we would make any changes here and what we can do in the future. But let us know if you agree or disagree with us in our top 8 here. A lot obviously going on this week in Challengers. We have one last day of group stage, and then we move our way into the bracket. It's going to be a really, really fun time. Well, let's get to those first couple of rounds of the bracket done this week. And then when we kind of come in next week, we'll be poised to sort of see, do we have any upsets, anything like that? What has you most excited for this coming week here, Enigma?
I think it's going to be seeing if any teams unexpectedly punch their way through playoffs. I think that a couple of teams, I don't know, man. Sometimes they get into playoff situations back against the wall. They're going to be eliminated from the tournament, come out swinging a little bit. And also, it's whether or not this Project Notorious and Bush Gaming rosters are the real deal. I think what you end up with sometimes, two like heavy hitters, juggernauts, they'll likely be at opposite sides of the bracket. If they get into winners finals and they're both absolutely taking chunks out of each other, that's going to be cinema for all of us to watch.
No, I think you hit it right on the head. There's some teams that I think we're hoping do well. There's some teams we expect expect to do well. And I think this first round of the bracket is going to be a really, really telltale sign of maybe how the rest of season 2 is going to go ahead and play on up. But let us know, chat, who do you want to see make it through in that bracket? Who do you want to see even just come out on top in the entirety of the Elite Season 2? Did our power rankings suck? Are they great? And should we keep calling it the Europa Cup over the Pup Cup? I don't know. That's for all you Europeans to decide. But that's all we have this week in Challengers. Cool.